how do you navigate interviews as a guest on podcasts or live streams? Today, let's break down some tips and tricks on how you can be accomplishing really cool live streams or podcasts as a guest to make sure that the experience is the best you possibly can. So I actually just got off of a live stream interview. Well, actually, it was a podcast interview. And there are a couple of things that I typically do when I'm jumping in to doing these guest appearances. I always want to make sure that I have all the information possible. So I always know what I'm doing when I'm jumping into these conversations. So when I schedule these things, I will actually put them inside of my calendar and I'll put the specific link or the blurb from the person who pitched it to me so I know what topics we're going to be discussing, because I have multiple places that I speak on, multiple industries, and I make sure that I know exactly who I'm going to be meeting and what I'm going to be talking about. Now, I always send information in advance. So my headshot, my bio, my links, anything that that person may need in order to interview me, I make sure that I've sent to them in advance. And if you have questions on this, go ahead and let me know. Hey, Danielle, thanks for jumping in. One of the things that I do beyond just sending information to my host or getting information from my host is to prepare for the meeting. So when you do a podcast interview or a live stream interview, it's usually recorded. You're usually on camera. So I always make sure I do my hair and my makeup. I look cute. And one of the tips that I give is you don't have to go out of your way to look super cute for these things. If you throw on a necklace or a hat, it looks like you intentionally designed yourself for the day without actually having to do very much work. So that's just a little life hack there. You're going to look a little bit elevated and higher end with that. And I always make sure that I have my audio and my camera ready to go. So usually these things are done virtually and you're going to have to do them through a Zoom interview, or you're going to do them through some live streaming platform. So you want to make sure that your camera on your computer or your phone is cleaned. You want to make sure you have some way of cleaning that off so it's not smudged or hazed. You also want to make sure that your microphone's good. So during some interviews, I am working specifically through the microphone on my computer or my phone. Other times I'll have my Blue Yeti mic over here that I'm able to then pull in front of me for something that's like a radio interview or a podcast that we don't want to have any background noise on, or they need it a little bit crisper. Typically, we just use the built-in audio, though. If you're just jumping in, we're talking all about how to prepare and get ready for live stream or podcast interviews as a guest. And so we want to make sure we're answering your questions, but I will be answering questions of other topics too, so feel free to drop those down below. So as I'm getting ready, I always make sure that I show up at least 5 minutes early and I'm ready to go. I make sure the area is well lit, so I have all of my ring lights on. I make sure my puppy is in the other room so that she does not make noise if she decides to scratch her ear, or if she decides to come over and see me. She's in a different room usually, so that it's nice and quiet. And I make sure that everything else is as quiet as possible. You obviously can't control the neighbors mowing their lawns or playing with chainsaws, but you do the best you can to make sure it's nice and quiet, well lit, and you're ready to go. Again, having your content ready and knowing what you're going to be talking about is incredibly important to make sure that you communicate very clearly. Now, another thing that I've learned is sometimes you will hear a question from somebody and you'll immediately lose it. You can start to answer it and talk around it just a little bit. I did that today to get around to the point, because your brain will be able to track what they said after the fact. So sometimes if you jump in, you can get around to getting to the point. And the more practice you do with this, the easier that becomes. If you have questions on how to do interviews as a guest, please feel free to let me know. But the main takeaways of today's conversation are: know what you are getting yourself into. So research the person you're talking to, their show, any blurbs that they've given you about what you're going to be talking about. Put that on your calendar with the link so that you do not end up late to the show and you know what you're talking about. Make sure that you send them all your information in advance, your headshot, your bio, anything that you need to be sending over to them in terms of marketing or media or information they need for that interview. Get that to them in advance. Always show up early and make sure that your camera source is clean and your mic is ready to go. Also, as a side note, if you are just using the built-in microphones, make sure you have either AirPods, earphones, or some type of headphone microphone nearby, just in case the built-in audio decides not to work. And you want to make sure that you are very aware of what you're going to be talking about, because when you get on the show, you're representing yourself and your business. So be aware of the topics and the conversations that you're going to be talking about. Make sure that you start into the question and your brain will be able to pick up if you have forgotten a question. Usually you can get back around to the point. Always try to speak in sound bites, so it's short, quick things that people can pull out and then put on social media later on. Another thing that I really like to do, and this is one that I have just given to all of you, I recorded it earlier, I haven't given it to you just yet, But I love to set up a camera and record myself doing the interview. So I'll put it on the back side of whatever camera source I've got. So if I was filming from my phone, I would have it back behind my phone and be filming myself speaking to the phone or to the computer so that I can use that later on. Now, with a lot of podcasts and live streams, you can't actually use the audio because that's meant specifically for that show. So you can't use those clips necessarily in audio form, but you can use it in your mini vlogs. You can use it as B-roll. You can take the audio off and put text over it, which you'll see earlier today. I did a live stream or a podcast interview and I recorded myself doing it. You're going to start seeing that content showing up on my social media over the next couple of days because I filmed it with the intent of using it as B-roll. And then of course you want to make sure that you offer any extra help to them to market the episode after the fact so that you are prepared and ready to go and it gets as much reach as possible.